Are you still setting up your meta campaigns with top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel, or running complicated retargeting setups? If you are, I've got bad news for you. You are behind the times. Meta's algorithm has been significantly updated in the last few months, but actually this change has been happening over several years, and that change means that you are no longer going to get optimum results from trying to force retargeting or force a funnel like that. Let's dive into it. I'm Jessie Healy. I'm a 7-figure exited agency founder turned e-commerce coach and consultant. I've helped over 100 e-commerce brands grow and scale, and I have spent over $50 million and counting on Meta advertising in my lifetime. What has changed in the Meta algorithm in 2025? So the first thing to understand is that Meta is now using sequence learning. It's not about individual clicks anymore. They are following your customer journey from wherever that customer goes, from ad to website to social posts and back again. It's looking at when it's liking, commenting, saving, and sharing your content. And it's using that information to predict which users are going to be most likely to buy and most close to the purchase moment. This is actually Meta's fix for the loss of tracking post iOS, looking more at what's happening inside the platform that they can control and completely track, and using that to optimize the ads. So funnels still matter. Human beings are still human beings that need to go from a stage of awareness to understanding and then to action. But Meta now runs that funnel for you. You, as the marketer, need to step back and not try to control everything in terms of how you drive people through that funnel. So the funnel's not dead. Meta just runs it under the hood and runs it for us in an automated way. So you still need content that's ideal for top of funnel. So videos, explainer content that tells a story and drives interest and desire and attracts attention. You still need that middle of funnel content that builds trust and nurtures people to be more interested in your product and drives more desire. And you still need that bottom of funnel simple content that, like static imagery, social proof, offers, things that drive people to take that final bit of action. But the point is, you're not going to lay these out in separate campaigns and have separate budget allocated to each of them, because that's not going to allow the algorithm the data it needs consolidated in a way for it to work with this new system. And it's not going to allow Meta to have the control it needs to look at all those other data points it has and put those together to build the perfect customer journey for your customer. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't test having a manual retargeting campaign, a campaign that you set up separately where you upload a list of emails, you tell it to target people who have visited your website or interacted with your socials. Certainly, if you're a very high ticket brand or you found those ad sets to work really well in the past, you can set those up and test them. What I'm advocating is that you don't rely on them or don't expect them to be a core part of your campaign unless you've proven that they work for you. So as a standard, I would generally recommend using CBO or Advantage Plus with a mix of different creative designed for the different parts of the funnel. And then once you've got some stable results that you can look at, you can then add a retargeting campaign and see if it adds to the overall ROAS of your account or not. You want to be careful looking at the ROAS that's associated with that individual campaign, but rather look at the total ROAS you're driving in the account, because you might find that ROAS might go up, but the ROAS might go down for the other campaign, and the net result might be that it's actually worse off having it separated. So you want to be really careful how you test that. But as standard, in most campaigns I'm setting up now for both large and small clients, we don't have a manual retargeting campaign. We're allowing Meta to run that retargeting for us. And trust me, they definitely do run retargeting for you. So your job as a media buyer or ads manager or whoever is running your ad account is now not about trying to design a complicated funnel, but providing Meta with a buffet of creative, of high quality, diverse creative for the different stages of the funnel that Meta can then use all of its AI and automation and understanding of your customer to feed those pieces of content to people at the right time. And here's a little tip. If you want to know which ads are actually being run more as retargeting versus being run as top of funnel prospecting ads, you can go and look at the frequency of those ads being viewed per user. And that frequency will tell you, because if an ad has a high frequency, that tells me it's being run more as retargeting. And if it has a low frequency and a high volume, that's likely that the ad is being used for prospecting. So that's just a little hint so you can see how Meta is dealing with those different bits of creative. Okay, so what does this mean for how we structure campaigns in 2025? Well, first and foremost, we are looking for consolidation. We shouldn't be running a whole lot of different campaigns and definitely not loads of different ad sets. The other thing to bear in mind is you want to go for broad audiences. Look, I'm not against you testing interest-based audiences sometimes. If you have a good reason and you test it and it works, absolutely go for it. But my default setting nowadays is a broad audience because broad gives Meta, the algorithm, the control it needs to be able to apply this new system and use all of the AI and data it has to go after people. Another thing we've noticed is actually Meta's kind of been ignoring any controls such as age, gender, or interest that you're putting into the ad sets anyway. So it's debatable whether they're going to even pay attention to those kind of guardrails that you're giving it. At the time of recording this video, you have the option still in most accounts to set up a standard campaign or an Advantage Plus campaign, but they generally use the same technology logic behind the scenes, so I won't talk too much about the difference. And the one thing I will say is it's really important, no matter how big your budget, that you actually have a testing campaign and a scaling or evergreen campaign. The typical setup that I run is I would have an Advantage Plus campaign where we have all of our winning creative, and that's our evergreen campaign that we're scaling. And then I would have a separate campaign. Now that could be an Advantage Plus campaign with multiple ad sets within it, where we are testing creative, and we're using that to launch new creative regularly to test. And how much creative you launch for testing depends on how much budget you've got allocated to testing. But generally, you don't want to have too many tests going on at once if you've only got a small budget. So you want to kind of put them out little by little, but you should always be testing even when your account is performing really well. A little trick is you can also, if you're using campaign budget optimization, you can put a minimum budget against an ad set to allow it to force some spend against an ad that you really want to test. What we find nowadays is often Meta will pick one particular ad or ad set and kind of exclude everything else. So that can just be a little workaround. If you think an ad is pretty good and you wanted to give it a test, you can do that. There's lots of debate from people as to whether that's the right thing to do or whether we should fully trust the algorithm. I sit somewhere in the middle. As a media buyer, sometimes I like to force the algorithm to do things that it doesn't want to do in order to get the best result possible, and I have seen that improve the ROAS in my accounts. So that in a nutshell is a little overview of how we would structure campaigns in 2025 in order to take advantage of the way the algorithm works now. The other thing that's so important to bear in mind about the Meta ad algorithm in 2025 is that creative diversity is absolutely non-negotiable. When I look at ad accounts and I order ad accounts that have fallen flat or haven't been able to scale, one thing I often notice is that they have a real lack of diversity of creative. They've found a winning formula and they've kind of like just started creating ads that all look a bit samey, or they've gotten a little bit obsessed with like their brand look and feel. So all of the ads are so perfectly matching the brand that there's no diversity to attract attention from different types of people or past customers who need to see something new. So you want to think about doing different formats. So whether that's GIFs, reels, static imagery, carousels, UGC, polished creative, AI generated creative, what we call native statics, which are those ads that are created, on a mobile and look very much like a piece of social content. We want all of that kind of variety in the ad account because Meta knows so much about its users and who likes what types of content, and it's able to match the ad to the type of person and the type of content they respond to, but also it's able to give something new and fresh to like people that might have seen your other ads. And the worst thing Meta can do to their audience is bore them and leave them unengaged. So creative diversity is key here. So lean into the way you can use AI tools and all of the technology and tools that are out there to create lots and lots of different types of creative and really figure out the system for doing that. And that's how you're going to be able to feed the algorithm with what it needs. Final couple of things I wanted to touch on about the Meta algorithm in 2025 is that more than ever, organic and paid must work together for you to get the most successful result possible. I see this so much in my client accounts. The clients who have a great social profile, great engagement, a great audience who interact with their content, ads is just easy mode for those type of clients. Whereas brands that are not doing much on social and are expecting ads to work by themselves really don't get the same kind of results. And because Meta has full access to all the data about like whether they follow you, how they're interacting with your content across both Facebook and Instagram, it's able to tie that together with the way that it sequences the ads. So really important that you're actually putting out a lot of content and interacting a lot with your customer base or your potential customer base, your audience, because that's going going to allow Meta to have that juicy data to know who to target and how to get your ad to the right people at the right time for them to buy. The other thing I must mention about the Meta ads algorithm in 2025 is that AI tools are a huge part of it, right? Like built-in tools into Ads Manager. So Meta is really pushing all these Advantage Plus creative options. So AI generated copy, AI generated image variations, AI generated music, layouts, all of this. So you could say in 2025 that is part of the algorithm, and you have the option to allow that full control to Meta to take full creative license with your inputs that you give it and tailor the creative to the people who are most likely to act on it. I personally, at the moment, at the time of recording this in 2025, although I think you will be rewarded for doing that in terms of the performance of your account, I think there's a trade-off, because do you want traffic or do you want revenue at all cost, or do you want to build revenue from the right kind of people who are being advertised in a way that fits with your brand values and your brand voice? There's a chance that Meta could take that creative license and actually say things about your product that aren't correct. So they could say made in the USA when it's not made in the USA. There's a ton of things like that it could do, or just really misrepresent your brand in a way that you don't want it to be misrepresented. So that's something I personally don't opt into the AI at the moment, even though I know it could potentially improve performance. You need to make that decision for your brand as to what you want to do, but know that allowing those AI variations could change very, very big aspects of your ad, both from how it looks, but what it says and the music that's represented there. Okay, so now you understand that Meta's algorithm update in 2025 means it's much better to have a consolidated campaign with not too many ad sets or campaigns. You want to go broad with your targeting, most likely. You want to feed it with lots of different creative types, and you want to have a creative testing campaign that's separate. But maybe you're feeling still a little bit confused and you might want someone to hold your hand, or just take a look at your ad account and see what might be able to be improved. If that's the case, feel free to book a 15-minute free call with me. We can take a look at your ad account together, and I'll advise you on some next steps for improving your performance. The link is below the video. You can book a call, 15 minutes. See you there.